there is often this stigma around ADHD, especially when it comes to being a high performer. Do you remember when you were diagnosed for the first time with ADHD, and what was the process like?
It's something that is relatively new to me that yeah, I do talk about it a lot. So I was having a lot of trouble. Like my head was literally hurting. Like my eyes were always bloodshot. I couldn't understand how I wasn't able to keep up with the administrative side of what I do. There was a little bit of depression in there as well, where I didn't feel like myself. Uh, I was again feeling very shameful about the fact that I wasn't able to complete simple tasks. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. Honestly, like these are things that were affecting me in ways that made me feel like again I wasn't myself. I wasn't Vince Bracy. I wasn't being the hardest working man in showbiz. I wasn't performing to my full self or even half of who I felt that I was or could be.
Welcome back to another episode of Coats in Conversation, where we have discussion around lifestyle, mental health, and educational topics. I'm your host, Kendrique Coats. We got a fantastic episode today, but before we get started, be sure to go out and like and subscribe to Coats in Conversation on YouTube. You can even listen to Coats in Conversation on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen to podcast episodes. Today's guest is Vince Bracy. I'm sure you all have seen or heard him on previous episodes of Coats in Conversation. And the first time that I met Vince, I could tell that there was something there. He had that it factor. He was genuine, he was authentic, and he just showed up in all of his conversations he was just so whole and just so genuine. Vince Bracy is a seasoned professional, master of ceremonies, and he's hosted thousands of events from weddings and bar mitzvahs to NBA games and festivals around the world. He's got a background in TV and radio, and Vince's goal for every event, live or virtual, is to motivate everyone in attendance to be the most fun version of themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Vince Bracy. How you doing today, Vince?
Yo, Kendrick, so happy to be on Coats and Conversation once again. Yeah, this is exciting. I'm glad when people get to see what I do. This is good, man. I get my own special episode. This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you joined, and it did take us about an hour to get through the technical pieces.
Showbiz,
But
baby.
before we also get started, we got to give a big shout out to Grant Jones, who is basically the producer of this show. He's put everything together, so it's made your job easy, Vincent. It's made my job easy as well as being a host. But the other thing is, it's been a while since you've been on Coats and Conversation. How's mental health your way?
Hey, appreciate that, man. Yeah, shout out to Grant again. I don't know how he ended up running this whole thing by himself when he was on the show last time. But again, grateful to be on the show and get to sit and have a personal conversation so people can get to understand a little bit about me, what I do, what I've been through. The mental health is very interesting. Since we're doing an actual check-in, I will let you know, I haven't told you this yet, I will let you know that as of, I believe, 3 days ago, uh, I stopped seeing my therapist mainly because of my insurance switched over, so it doesn't cover BetterHelp. So I have to find a new therapist soon. So that's going to be a journey in itself. I absolutely have been a little bit overwhelmed over I would say the last couple weeks or so, just making sure that everything is tight for the ebook I'm dropping soon. And yeah, getting back to work is a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on, but overall, I'm always in a positive, optimistic place, and looking forward to getting back to work and eventually, like I said, finding a new therapist and helping people through my ebook.
I appreciate you sharing that because it is vulnerable to talk about mental health, but then also letting folks know that you haven't been seeing your regular therapist. And I think when it comes to finding therapists or switching insurance companies, it can be a huge shift for a lot of people. When you've gone through that shift, I'm sure you've had supportive people behind you that have helped in that transition.
I've got my wife, which is beautiful. Funny enough, we also have we have a couples therapist who coincidentally had a baby the day that we got married. So our
Mm,
couples therapist is also on maternity leave. So I'm just out here roaming the wild, just letting my brain discover things as it comes. But yeah, absolutely still an advocate for therapy. Obviously, I meditate. You know, I have all types of different things that I do to keep myself on track. But yeah, still recommend getting a therapist. Still recommend listening or even being a part of podcasts like this one, so you can take some time to reflect. Because I feel like that's what therapy really is. It's reflecting on who you are and what you've been through.
no, I appreciate you sharing. And you always have me over here, and you've got Grant, and you also have shout out to Dr. E.
Yes, sir.
Good dudes behind you that are always supportive. So again, I appreciate you sharing the mental health check-in. So getting into today's show, we're obviously going to talk about the ebook later on in the show, but to kick things off, you've had a long journey to get to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about your journey and some of the struggles you've gone through to being Vince Bracy, the hardest working man in show business today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, I feel like you can't be the hardest working man in showbiz without experiencing some trials and tribulations along your journey. So I will say again, Vince Bracy, happy to be here. I'm a kid from the Bronx that likes to have fun, y'all. I think that can pretty much sum up most of what my story is and how I've managed to maneuver through the world. Again, grew up in the Bronx, New York, not the most friendly, flourishing neighborhood in the world. So I feel like everybody's got something. In New York, they say if you could make it there, you can make it anywhere. So I feel like that little chip on my shoulder has been there for quite some time, but I never understood what was the anywhere. Where do I go? I never was somebody that was excited or looking forward to traveling for the most part. But once you learn more about what's out there, it's kind of like, oh, it would be nice if I could see those things. So what happened was, weirdly enough, if I haven't shared this on the podcast before, I've wanted to be a dentist my entire life. Uh, it's it's less than entire now because I've been hosting for most of my life now. I'll say in my childhood, I wanted to be a dentist. My father was an electrician. My mother was a teacher. I wasn't able to do all the things that they wanted me to do, or I wasn't able to do all the same uh, opportunities. My father, he didn't want me to be in front of a chalkboard or anything like that. So I had to find my own way. Coming to find out, a dentist is someone that teaches people how to keep their teeth clean and uses special tools to do it. So that was something that interested me, as well as the fact that my dentist at the time was the only person aside from my father who was also named Vince. So I found so many different things. I had good teeth. I always had a good smile, which is something I talk about in the ebook as well. But yeah, I kids are usually afraid of the dentist. I was not, because my dentist was super cool. Again, his name was Vince as well. So these are all things that just added on to who I was as a person. Just to breeze through some of this story, I ended up working in a dentist's office for 4 years, all throughout high school, and just knew that that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to be. Something we'll talk about in this journey is the pivot, folks. The pivot. When I got to college, I had some very interesting, somewhat traumatic experiences, which I definitely have talked about in one episode before, where I had to change schools. I ended up going from Howard University, which was my first choice, because that's the school that the dentist that I worked under for 4 years went to. He told me about the program where I can, get out of dentistry school in 6 years, and it didn't work out. I wasn't great at science, math, or staying attached to my studies and stuff like that. It was rough. It was rough. So I had to transfer to a school. Shout out to Lehman College in the Bronx, New York, where I basically became the person I am today. Obviously, everything in my life has led up to me getting to that point. But me being at Lehman, it went from me, studying to be a dentist still, realizing that, all right, maybe these classes aren't the ones for me, especially focus, super, super. But I realized that I could be an entertainer. I could be, a funnier guy. I could be somebody that puts smiles on faces. And what happened was I became an orientation leader. If you've ever gone to a school and had someone walk you around, show you, where the cafeteria is, where the bookstore is, here's the financial aid line. That was something that I did at my school for quite some time. And I would say that that was my first shot at hosting. That was my first time to, be in front of a crowd of people and have to talk about everything that I have going on. And that was something that spoke to me. From there, I got to give credit to one of my amazing mentors, O'Day Hoppy, aka DJ Phoenix, who basically showed me the ropes at the school. He DJ'd all the events and was like, "Well, I'm gonna put you on the microphone. I'm gonna put you on the microphone for a little bit." And from hosting shows at Lehman College to having other people from other schools come out and see how I was on the microphone, just literally being myself, that was something that kind of changed a lot of things for me, because that was what ignited the, oh, there's more. Oh, you should come to our school. You should come to our school and talk, or you should go to this school, or you should try this, or look at this, and digging into Craigslist and figuring out that weddings was the way to go. There's so many things that I've had in my journey, in my journey that have taken me to greater heights. But it's been more of the what's next. What is the next level of this that has gotten me to a place where I started to develop the mindset of, oh, I can work hard at just being myself and having fun. Obviously, it's not that simple. It takes a lot of work to follow your dreams, but those are the things, and those are the ideas and the thoughts that I had running through my mind to get me to where I am today.
Wow. Bro, first off, how did I never know that you were going to school to become a dentist? This is the very first time that
True.
I've heard about this.
Wow, wow.
I never knew that.
Yeah,
But
that's a big part of my life story, man.
yeah, that's to go through that whole journey and those experiences to where you were in it and you got to the point where you just completely pivoted. What was that feeling like? Especially when I'm sure, or maybe I'm assuming that you were at a point where you just had your mind set on becoming a dentist, and then later pivoting out of that. What was your thought process? What did that feel like?
Yeah, man. I will tell you. Yeah, I'm glad that you went back to that, because I was like, this story is way too long. I can go on for days. Uh, but yes, it got me to a point where, again, when I switched schools, I realized like the work that I was doing was pretty heavy for someone who, as we'll get into later, I didn't know I had ADHD at the time. So it was, I felt like I was being attacked by my own brain. And that's kind of what it feels like sometimes. I can't focus. I can't continue to study. I can't, answer all the questions in the timely fashion like we're supposed to in school, where everything is very structured. What happened was, again, between me realizing that I was talented at hosting events and keeping people happy for some reason. And also, I was really into like videos, and YouTube was just starting off. I make myself sound really old now. But these are all things that I was just having fun doing. I was just having fun making videos with my friends. I ended up using some of those videos in my orientation job, and people kept telling me, "Oh, you have a talent for this. You have a talent." First gem of the day I will give out is that, if people keep telling you something about yourself, you might want to believe them every once in a while. So I, in school, realizing that I wasn't going to have all the top scores for the prerequisites I needed to get into dental school. I still did not give up on that dream just yet. That's one thing about me. I'm not a quitter. I refuse. I refuse to quit. Uh, so I was like, well, I can still get into dental school if I finish off these biology or chemistry classes somewhere else. But in the meantime, I do still need to graduate from this school. So what I did was I was an anthrobiochem major at one point. I decided I was going to take anthropology as a minor and then change my major to something else. I could do African American studies because that's easy enough, and I like to learn about where I came from. Uh, Funny enough, I've gotten a lot of African American studies history knowledge crammed in my brain from childhood, from being a black man, and also from attending Howard University for a year. So it almost seemed like it was the easy way out. Again, I've had friends, colleagues, classmates tell me, "You're really, really good at this video thing, man. You should try it out. You should check it out. You should investigate." And I was like, I can't make any money doing that, but I will check it out. Come to find out, after signing up and changing my major to communications, I believe at the time, eventually graduated with a degree in multimedia studies with a focus in television, theater, and journalism. Uh, I took one class. That very first class that I got after changing my major was an intro to television class. That intro to television turned out to be an internship at a television station. That television internship turned out to be what my career was after that. The very first day at that internship, I was working camera or something like that. And I got home later on that day, turned on the TV to that channel, and saw my name in the credits. And that completely blew my mind from then on. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. I just got class credit for having my name on TV. Like, this is insane. Shortly after that, I ended up working at that TV station, and coincidentally, the intro to television two, part two of that class, was taught by the person that was my supervisor at the TV station. So when I walked in the classroom, she saw me. She said, "Oh, Vince knows everything. I'm going to get coffee," and then stepped out. So I basically ended up teaching a class. I ended up teaching a class on the history of television and how to work cameras and stuff like that. And like I said, I went on to do that for a few more years, and it became one of the most beautiful things that I have ever experienced, because I went from doubting myself, thinking I wasn't going to make it out of college, struggling to make certain grades, having to turn papers in, to being in one of the easiest and most naturally flowing positions that I've ever been in my life, where I get to be on TV, I get to teach other people how to be on TV, and who knows where this can take me.
Mm. Whew, man, just
Yeah,
unpacking
it
or
was
thinking
hard though.
about
It was hard.
unpacking all of that. I some of this, y'all listening and viewing, some of this information, and I've known Vince for a while. So some of this stuff I'm learning for the first time, and so listening to your journey, it's amazing, but then secondly, like I can relate to some of the things that you've talked about, especially dabbling in different careers, and then you mentioned like you got into a position where it felt like the easiest thing that you'd ever done, and I'm sure that has brought you some sort of fulfillment. But I'm curious to know, after all of that of what you just explained in your journey to getting to where you are, there, I'm sure there were times when you were in some low spaces or low times in your life, or rock bottom. I think we've talked about it before. So for the viewers and audience, give them an idea of where your mental health was during that time through your journey of going to school, you were wanting to become a dentist, and then transitioning into what you do now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't think it was an easy switch, people. I will definitely let you know that in going from, oh, I'm going to be a dentist, and everybody in my life knows that about me, to now I'm gonna be an entertainer. I'm gonna host things. I'm gonna record things. Uh my parents were not down for it. They were like, hey, you just can't switch up. Like, again, same reason I was hesitant about going into that field. My parents, oh, you can't make money doing that. Again, I didn't have people like Kevin Hart, Steve Harvey, Ryan Seacrest at the top of mind when thinking about explaining how I'm going to eventually make a career out of this. But yeah, again, I know for a fact for a long time that I have never been a quitter. Even if there's things that I physically can't do, I'm not gonna give up. Like, I I go hard in the gym too, even when I'm feeling dead. So there was a lot of internal struggle taking place where it's like, oh, I can't do this. I don't want to do this for myself. Am I doing this for the money? Am I doing this because I want to be successful at something because I know I can't be successful at this thing that I've been consistently failing at? Yeah, mental health was in a very interesting place, and I will say that I've always been somewhat of a deep thinker, but my love for mental health awareness was not where it is now. So just just being in a place where it's like, oh, I don't know how to feel, or I don't know how to express myself in these this certain situation. Thinking back, there was a lot of shame about having to leave a school that I worked so hard to get into. There was a lot of shame dealing with the fact of switching up my major, getting to a place where I don't know. This is the unknown that comes after this. Before it was more of a very clear laid out path of all right, 4 years of college, right? A certain amount of specific years. I think it was like 2 to 4 years in dental school, and then maybe two pick a to pick a specialist where time to be a cosmetic dentist because everybody pays money for teeth, right? Uh, but yeah, I think with moving into the path of entertainment, there's almost no ceiling. You're on a road. You get to a certain place. Obviously, because I got started in more of a journalism field, there was like, okay, if I start here, then I can go to News 12, which is more local. Then maybe I can get a job at Fox and Y or something like that. And then just see where things take me from there. But yeah, I will just say that it was definitely a hard time. But the thing that I appreciate about myself the most, more than anything, is the optimism that remains. I give credit to my mom for always having like a can do attitude, and just making sure that even though she fought me a little bit on switching to entertainment as opposed to dentistry, but that that attitude is what kept me alive. I would say honestly.
That optimism goes a long way, especially when we are transitioning from one career to another or thinking about different things in our lives. And I can remember, similar to you, when I made a pivot when I was running my own small sports performance business and
Mm,
considering wanting to be a therapist and then actually taking the jump into working towards becoming a licensed therapist. I know I struggled with, well, what are other people going to think of me if I leave this training business that I put so much time and effort, but also I've helped so many people. So, in your
yeah.
position, when you were, making that pivot, did you ever have an internal conflict with yourself of, well, what are other people going to think of me if I make this transition?
Yeah, honestly, and this is definitely a mental health thing as well. I will say again, part of me not being a quitter is I used to an extent I still do, but I definitely recognize that I used to in life put a lot of weight on what other people thought about me. So the fact that I said this is what I was going to do, this is who I was going to be, and for me to have to give that up, it was a huge part of my personality as well. To this day, I'm still like really like weirdly passionate. I follow a few random like celebrity dentists on Instagram and stuff like that. Like I still want to make sure my smile is good. I'm debating if I want to get Invisalign for myself or get my teeth whitened or the veneers and stuff like that. Like I'm still very passionate about my particular smile and other people's dental health as well as mental health. Right. So yeah, it was definitely an internal struggle to be like, well, if I've built my whole life around this person, this image, and this career path, then what are people going to think if I decide to switch and do something different? And especially, what are people going to think if I switch and do something different and it doesn't pan out, nearly to what people think that it should be, what it should look like, or should I even set goals for myself in this new path because it's so random. It's so different than just staying in school. Honestly, I don't even know if I need school to do this. So there was yeah. there was there was a lot of back and forth with myself, trying to figure out what the right opportunity was. And it wasn't until more recently that I decided, hey, this is the path that I'm going to take. And even now, still to this day, that path is still super unclear. And I'm sure Grant can attest to that as well.
I can imagine being in the entertainment business to where there's so many different things. I mean, you've told me before, I think Grant's told me as well. It's just like it's kind of one of those things where you may have a great season, a
Mm,
great 4 months, and then there's a downtime. But going back to what you mentioned as far as this internal conflict with your identity was tied into wanting to become a dentist and trying to fight the narrative of what society thinks we should do versus what you actually want to do as a person. Because when you start doing things that make you feel whole, that validates yourself, but then also gives you purpose and you're not having to worry about what other people are thinking because
right.
ultimately you're living your life for yourself. Man, it's a game changer and I can sense that about you. You're in your groove of what you're doing, and I think you've done a few edits for some videos for me. And I think it was Grant's video you did, and I was like, I sent you a message back. I'm like, dude, that's
Hey.
dope. Like, do some like, how many can you do? But then I also wanted, as Grant says, I wanted to be mindful of your time
Yeah.
because, you know, it's one of those things to where that is something people pay top dollar for some of the edits that you've done. And it's one of those things as well. You've mentioned kind of the ADHD and just seeing some of the work that you do. And I'm like, ADHD is not your identity. Like you've gotten
Yeah.
past like the identity of, well, I have ADHD. And so going into that conversation, there is often this stigma around ADHD, especially when it comes to being a high performer. Do you remember when you were diagnosed for the first time with ADHD and what was the process like?
Oh man, I'm glad that you touched on those things. Appreciate the kudos on the videos as well. Before I even get into that, I do want to say that yeah, I don't at this point in life, I don't necessarily consider it as consider having ADHD as part of my identity, but I'm in a place where I'm learning so much about it because it's something that is relatively new to me. That yeah, I do talk about it a lot. I do want to also let people know, like, yo, I consider it. I'm sure people have heard Kanye refer to bipolar disorder as a superpower. That is something that I absolutely feel about ADHD, and just the fact that, like, I forget that I'm artistic. I forget that I'm good at videos, and that even though I don't necessarily like editing too much, I'm really, really talented at it, and have taught other people how to do it as well. So that's something that uh, if anybody that is experiencing any type of I don't want to even call it an illness, any type of mental health situation, just focus on your strengths, focus on what you're good at, and also try new things. But yeah, to get back into your question, I am 34 years old. I have to remember that sometimes. I was diagnosed shortly after my 32nd birthday, so it's been about 2 years at this point now. The only reason, get this, the only reason I got diagnosed was because, well, first off, I think since college, since I transferred to the new school, I had a boss that would tell me, he's the first person to introduce me to like manifesting and the secret and all these things. So it meant a lot to me in that moment that he told me that I reminded him of a younger version of himself. And shortly in that conversation, he let me know that he was diagnosed officially with ADHD, and that just kind of blew my mind because I'm like, oh, you're capable of doing so many different things. Like, you put this whole program together, you plan this retreat, like you got college kids watching The Secret, and I've never even heard of this before, but it's something that I felt. So that was a moment that was really important to me. But yeah, I got diagnosed a couple years ago. Only reason I was diagnosed was because, again, I had been feeling this feeling my entire life. Couldn't necessarily put a word or a feeling or even a description on it. The best I could do as an adult now is what I referred to earlier as my brain was attacking me, or it was attacking itself. And I don't know if anybody ever experiences anything like that, maybe you should get checked out. But the roughest and toughest headache that you could experience possibly, uh, if you've ever just been extremely tired and not been able to do anything, like these are things that I experience on the regular, which is also part of the reason why I consider myself to be the hardest working man in showbiz, because I feel like I'm doing so much, but my body is fighting itself. My body is trying to stop me. My brain does not absolutely want to do. Oh, why are you so active? Why are you doing all these things? Like, can we just relax? Can we just do something mindless? And I think that's what all the social media apps try to feed off of, which is why I try to stay off of them for the most part, even though I need them to grow my business. But jumping around, which is something that ADHD people do, I would say. The reason I had gotten diagnosed is because shortly after COVID, or during COVID, I should say, when live events weren't a thing, I had to find a way to make ends meet, So I had signed up for working for other companies, doing virtual trivia nights and stuff like that, that I'm sure some of you have seen. Lots and lots of fun, but it wasn't paying the bills completely. I found another job where I was working for nonprofits, hosting Zoom meetings, which it was very meaningful. Every single meeting that I hosted was giving money to some random nonprofit. People were getting information. It was something that it made my heart beat, y'all. It was meaningful. But aside from hosting the meetings, there was a lot of administrative work, a lot of clerical stuff that had to take place, and I I always felt like school wasn't for me, but to have to be like forced to sit from 9 to 5. I didn't mention it was a 9 to 5 job. I've never had a 9 to 5 in my entire life. Which again, that speaks to who I am as a person. But I would say that if you're being thrown into a 9 to 5 position, it's kind of detrimental if you don't understand how the corporate world works, how responding to emails in a timely fashion work. Like these are things that people need to grasp. And even at this big age, if you will, there's a lot of people that still don't get these things. So I was having a lot of trouble. Like my head was literally hurting. Like my eyes were always bloodshot. I couldn't understand how I wasn't able to keep up with the administrative side of what I do. Put a camera on, throw me into a meeting that I wasn't even supposed to be hosting. I'll kill it. Like that's what I do. This is my gift, my superpower again. Just speaking to people and making sure they're having a good time. But yeah, I was really bothered by the fact that I couldn't complete tasks, and not only at work, but it was spilling into my personal life. Like the house would be messy. My fiance at the time, now wife, was always complaining about, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you forgot to make dinner. You started making dinner and left the burner on, and now the the dinner and the pot is burnt. These are things that were freaking me out in a way, as well as the fact that I wasn't being able to keep up with all the craziness taking place on social media. If I did get on social media, I would be in a daze for hours and hours and hours, and the whole day would fly by. There was a little bit of depression in there as well, where I didn't feel like myself. Uh, I was again feeling very shameful about the fact that I wasn't able to complete simple tasks. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. Honestly, like these are things that were affecting me in ways that made me feel like, again, I wasn't myself. I wasn't Vince Bracy. I wasn't being the hardest working man in showbiz. I wasn't performing to my full self, or even half of who I felt that I was or could be. All these things made me take the time to go and find a doctor, find a therapist, a psychiatrist, take some tests, answer a bunch of questions, and eventually they all confirmed what I've kind of felt already, that I did in fact have ADHD, um, and that I would say that I think any kind of diagnosis for people is usually looked at as a bad thing. For me, it was more of a relief, because now I could put a name on what I was feeling. Now I could put a name on all these thoughts rushing around my head, and it's not. I'm not going to say it's not a curable disease or anything like that, but there are methods, there are techniques that can be used to put into action to help you function better as a human being. There's also medication and stuff like that, which I have tried. Uh, and, everybody reacts to that stuff differently. But certain simple things, such as writing things down, which everybody says is, oh, just write it down. Just write it down. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. Very, very hard. Still to this day, very, very hard for me to remember certain things. But yeah, just building certain practices and habits, I guess, is the number one way. Just as people that don't have ADHD, or what is the word I'm looking for? Not neurotypical. There we go. Neurotypical people, they still struggle with remembering things, remembering people's names, scheduling things, all the same tactics that you could use to become a better adult, if you will, and make sure that you're adulting properly and correctly. These are all things that I can put into action, but with little tweaks that make it easier for me to either remember things or actually.
Kind of cut out there. Now that's so. I want to first give you your kudos for sharing. I think when we talk about uh, if folks have been diagnosed with said issue or whatever you want to call it can be debilitating at times, but just you talking about that and giving it a name and having an understanding of yourself and becoming more educated on ADHD, it sounds like that you've been able to basically implement certain things in your life that has made it easier to manage some of the, um, I guess, common symptoms of dealing with ADHD. The other thing that I want to go back to, and it's something that we've talked about as far as me and marriage and family therapy in some of my training, is narrative. Like we all have these narratives and we all have these stories about ourselves, and those stories sometimes dictate how we go or how we move in life. I'm going to give you your kudos again because you have not allowed ADHD to one become your identity, but then secondly, you haven't allowed the narrative of what ADHD does to some people. You
Mm,
haven't allowed it to debilitate you and how you move in life, which is amazing because it is very easy sometimes to get a diagnosis and say, well, this is who I am, and well, I guess this is I just I've got a new life and I can't do X, Y, and Z. Whereas
yeah,
you hardest working man in showbiz, you're like, no, this isn't who I am. This isn't my identity. I'm going to keep on going. And it through that going, and Nipsey Hussle, shout out to Nipsey Hussle, he says this is a marathon. You've allowed this to become a marathon to where you are going, from point A to point B, which takes us into our next question before we wrap things up is so you've literally been through it all. You've had to pivot from becoming a dentist, moving into the showbiz world, and you've kept your confidence, which is a complete game changer. You've dealt with certain things such as ADHD and all the struggles that sometimes comes with, and you kept on going and you kept your confidence. You are now about to put out an ebook, and when you think about coming up with an ebook and all the work that comes with creating an ebook and having to deal with ADHD, I'm sure there are struggles there, but you still have maintained your confidence. Your ebook is basically a self confidence guide, being the life of the party. Vince, tell us about this ebook.
being the life of the party. I appreciate that, Kendrick. Thank you so much, man. Uh, yeah, this is a culmination of my pretty much my entire life. Not all the intricacies and stuff like that, but again, more of a mindset thing. Uh, Again, I did not know for most of my life that I had ADHD, so that was something that was kind of like a big surprise to me, but it started to make sense. Things started to make sense. But when I recognized the things that I aligned with myself, like, again, I'm not a quitter. That was, as we talked about, that was one of the stories that I told myself constantly to make sure that I stayed on top of my game, whatever realm or game that I was in at the time. So being the life of the party, once I realized that I was, in fact, the life of the party. I was in control of my own destiny, and also I was pretty damn good at entertaining. That's what people know me for. I realized that lots of people kept asking me the same question over and over again. Well, where do you get this confidence from? Why are you so positive? How are you always, in an upbeat mood? You're always smiling. You're always dancing. Like, and I would go into pretty much the whole podcast. I would tell people my entire life story every single time. Like, well, this is, I'm a kid from the Bronx. Like, I've seen some things. I've been through some things. Like, this is how I've managed to keep myself in go mode, pretty much. Uh, so I know everyone has probably been in a place in their lives, or you can probably identify somebody in your life that may not necessarily be feeling like themselves at all times. They may not, have the confidence, or they might have some limiting beliefs within themselves that won't allow them to push further to what that next level is. And a lot of times, everybody doesn't care about the next level. Everybody doesn't see, like, oh, I could be doing more than what I'm doing now. Being the life of the party is, again, everything that I've fed myself and passed on to other people that I care about, close friends, people that I just met that saw me at an event or something like that. These are the tips that I've given people over the years to let them know, hey, look, this is how you lock into your best self. And I've gotten a ton of tips over the years that I'm most likely going to end up writing another book at some point. But this is probably just the most condensed version of, just how you get yourself to the next level. Being the life of the party, the subtitle is 5 steps you need to turn up your life, your career, or an actual party. So if there's anybody that's out there that, they might be kind of shy, we would call them a wallflower. At a party, they might just be hanging, they're hanging back. Well, I'll see how everything else goes. I feel like most people in life are wallflowers, just watching life go by, watching things happen to them. I feel like if you want to fully manifest, your dreams, go after those things that you want, you have to get your back up off the wall and dance. Come on, like that's what you got to do. You got to dance through life. You got to find ways to enjoy yourselves as much as possible, because the way that I look at things, life is kind of a party. There's a way to have fun throughout this entire thing, but everybody's not either willing. Some people are shy. Nobody wants to be the first person on the dance floor. I'm telling you, you got to step up. You got to step up and enjoy the party. That's the only way you're gonna enjoy, yourself to the fullest.
The wallflower, man. There's when you talked about people have a tendency to just watch life go by them, and then get later on in life 50, 60, 70, 80 years old and have all of these regrets. And so this ebook sounds like it can give you the spark that you need to go after what it is that you're wanting to go after, whether that be starting a new business, whether that be start a new relationship, whether that be just get out and meeting new people. This ebook sounds like it can be that X factor that some people have been looking for. And the one thing that I'll say is, if we spend most of our time just watching life go by, we end up getting treated like that as well. So we almost have to take initiative on what we want in life and how we want our life to go. We basically are the authors to our story, and I think Et talks about, and maybe it's Kevin Hart. He's like, "What's your story? What story are you writing? You've got a book that you're trying to create. What is your story going to be when you get to retirement or at the end of your life? What story did you leave yourself to read or other people
There
to
we go.
leave?" And so this ebook sounds like that can also be your legacy of what you're leaving behind as well, for people to be inspired, to be motivated just through all of the things that you've gone through. You're like, people need to hear this. People need the 5 tips to just igniting their life. And so when does this ebook come out?
Ebook will be officially dropped April 11th, so people can get the 411 on being the life of the party. Right. By the time you're watching this, I'm hoping that you have a copy. We'll make sure we have some links or something like that. But yeah, I do like what you said, Kendrick. I just want to leave with people that Your story. I think that might have been Kevin Hart that said that. I think the easiest way to look at it, there is a. I don't know if I wouldn't call it a meme, if you will. There's a thought process, if you will. Basically, if you look at life as a movie, again, I look at life as like a party. I'm dancing all through this thing, but a lot of people look at life as a movie, and there's all these different characters and stuff like that. But who's the main character? Pretty much, who is the main character? Is the main character someone else in your movie? I don't think that that's the best way to look at things. If you consider yourself to be the main character, then that's what being the life of the party is. You have to operate in a way that, not to say that everybody has to, follow your beckoning call or anything like that, or everything turns out the way that you want it to, because that's not how life works, and we know that, right? But making sure that you are in control, making sure that you're taking the first step, you're leading conversations, you're taking the initiative to go after the things that you want. That's what being the life of the party is. Because why are you watching somebody? I mean, you could watch somebody else's movie, but if you're in your movie, if this is the Kendrique Coats movie, then somebody else should not be the main character. That's all about you.
Facts. 100%. 100%. Before we wrap up everything, is there any small teasers you can give on what people should expect, or if there's anything in the book that you're like, man, people should get just a little taste of what's in this your ebook?
Yeah, you know what? I have been doing teasers on Instagram Live. The number one, I think we've repeated this a couple times. The number one thing that I've been saying mostly on most of the Instagram lives that we've had, shout out to my guy Grant Jones, has participated in a couple of them, is having an attitude of gratitude. I think that's the number one thing that you need to make sure that you are, moving through your life as the main character, as the life of the party. You should be grateful to be here. You should be happy to be in this position. I'm happy to be on this podcast right now. If I'm the only person on the screen right now, I'm feeling like the main character, and this is a grateful opportunity for me to continue to promote something that I care about. And everyone should be happy to be in a position where they can talk about themselves. They can, wake up and breathe every single day. And also that, as the main character or the life of the party, that the camera gets to be on you at some point, and you're not just in the background, still just trying to figure things out. Now, a lot of people may be in that part of their life, which is why I have written this book again. But just know that it's possible to get out of it. It's possible to be the life of the party, and you can, maneuver through life as best as possible, moving closer and closer towards the dreams that you want to achieve.
Vince Bracy, I appreciate the transparency, the authenticity that you provided us in this show, but more importantly, just the level of humbleness that you also have. You've been through it all, you've seen it all, and you've been worldwide, entertaining crowds of people. And it's just a testament of who you are, just having that confidence in yourself, but then also that motor, knowing that you are not going to stop until you get to the success that you have pictured in your story.
Right.
So I'm thankful for this episode. How can people find you, and how can people find the ebook?
Yeah. Thank you, man. I feel like there's so much we didn't get to still. Like there's I mean, the
Part
story
two.
goes on. But you'll be able to read that in more books. We're going to write some more books for y'all, I promise. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those things. I'm always at Vince Bracy. Again, because of my severe love for social media. Usually Instagram is the only app that I frequent. So please feel free to follow me on there. Feel free to message me. Let me know that you saw the podcast. Uh, Only way that you can get in contact with me specifically and download this ebook, there will be links on my Instagram as well, but vincebracy.com. Thank you so much. And also, I want to see if I can try to pitch something to this. I haven't recorded the audiobook version yet, but I'm probably going to end up selling that as well. I'm probably, you got to get to the bag these days. If you are looking to get a free copy of the audiobook version of Being the Life of the Party, which isn't recorded yet, so I'll make sure that, we'll find a way to track this back. But make sure you listen to this podcast, obviously, subscribe to the podcast, and leave a comment, leave a good rating, leave a comment, and say, hey, I listened to this episode with Vince Bracy, and I want that free audiobook version. And Kendrick will let me know so we can get you hooked up with that.
Absolutely. Vince, again, I appreciate you and appreciate everything you do. For those that are listening or viewing this episode, I just want to leave you with this. I think it just goes in line with the conversation today is, again, what kind of life do you want for yourself? What kind of purpose, what kind of fulfillment do you want in your life? And if you, like Vince said, are you going to be a wallflower in your story? Or are you going to be the main character? Which I thought that was a powerful statement from Vince.
Come
So
on.
again, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening. Again, be sure to go to Coats in Conversation to subscribe, leave a comment on this episode. Let Vince know, what did you think about the ebook? What was your best part of the ebook? If you're on Apple or Spotify, be sure to like and subscribe to Coats in Conversation, and be sure to go out to Vince Bracy to get a copy of the new ebook. Again, folks, we appreciate you tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to be on the lookout for additional episodes coming in the future, and we appreciate the love and support. Until next time, take care. We'll see you soon.
Perfect.